Hey everybody, we are here in Johannesburg, as they say, with my good friend Rock Mutegheki.
Yeah.
And his wife Deborah is with us, and Anil Roscoe.
Yeah.
And Pat Ancliff,
Yeah.
who's been overseeing this region for C3 Global. For how long, Pat?
Since 2001.
Wow. So that's like over 20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rock has been one of our star pastors, doing such a great job in Uganda, and has gone through a lot of challenges, but it all started when you got saved. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm a preacher's kid. My mom is a preacher, and I got saved by following my mom in our traditional Anglican church. So that was amazing. I continued in salvation and leading fellowships all the way through high school, and then graduated at campus. So after that, I got a job with Compassion, and then I had this call from God to plant a church in a small village called Bwera. And it's out of there that we did Kampala, and we've done several others. Now we have 4 locations in Uganda and 3 standalone church plants, and many more.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So Anil, you're South Africa Regional Director, right?
Yes.
You and Judy, and I was in your church on Sunday, Man Alive. You've come through COVID, and you're still standing, and you're regathering. Wow. It's an amazing thing. And you just finished building a wall.
And a wall around you.
That's fantastic.
Now, for the rest of the world, that may not seem like a big issue, but having a wall here for security, if you haven't got a wall, you can lose all kinds of things out of that building. So tell us how you got born again.
Yeah, Pastor Phil. I got born again when I was very young. I remember grade 7, and then got lost, and someone said, "Are you still born again?" And then I really had an encounter with Jesus, and then started going to church regularly, having to drop most of my friends. And never have gone to Bible school, but was in a very evangelistic church where Sunday mornings we were taken out to go and preach. And then we started becoming a little bit unsettled in the house. And then Judy and I just started seeking God, and we were not even knowing that we were going to plant a church. But I specifically heard God said, "You must take responsibility for your family." So I was going to preach for my family, and I was going to eat on a Sunday. I was going to start feeding. And then we started the church just from the ground. We planted the church, and by the grace of God, we thought we were going to have 10 people. When 10 people rocked up, God said, "Is this not good enough for 100 people?" And then we just kind of enlarged our dream. And then I casted a vision in our church that said, in 5 years' time, we'll have a building. So in Johannesburg, in South Africa, with a small church, to have a building of your own is a big thing. Then the guy who hosted us for 4 years, rich man, gave us the church. God told me he was going to put us out. And then he died. He put us out. And then God gave us a church 5 years later.
Wonderful.
This year, we've just settled that church. Like Pastor Phil says, we built the wall. Now, truly, when we look at the history of that church, and when you look at the history of South Africa, this church was built in the segregation times in 1942. This is 2023. There was never a wall before, and we knew that going after that wall. So a wall that wasn't built in 81 years got built in eight weeks.
Come on.
Amazing. Well, Pat has been looking after the region, like we said, for over 20 years. And you've seen a lot of things, Pat, right?
Yeah.
In our whole South Africa, the continent of Africa, East, West Africa. You've had a lot to do with that. Tell us something about your experience here.
I think the way it started was absolutely extraordinary. I still remember the time in church we had a lady from our church who was doing a ministry in northern Uganda. And she brought with her on a visit to Sydney her operations manager, a guy called David Livingston Akello.
So that was Irene Gleason,
That's right. And we prayed for them for safety. They needed it because they were going back into a war zone. And as David was walking back to his seat after being prayed for by yourself, you just said, "Oh, David, when you go back, we want you to plant a C3 church."
Come on.
And he turned around and he went, "Yes, sir." And that's how it started.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I believe that's how we've got to keep starting churches. Just saying to anybody who's willing, let's do it. You know, and being willing, we were talking about this at breakfast. It's such a big thing, people, to be willing. I think that might even be more important than having faith.
Yes.
Wow.
Because I think if you're willing, you actually get faith.
Come on.
Right?
Come on. Come on.
But if you're unwilling, you don't.
Yeah.
In fact, you get reasons why you can't do something.
Wow.
Exactly.
Now, if David had said to me, "Well, I haven't got money, I haven't got people, I haven't got resources, all of that," but if you just say yes to the Lord,
Come on.
then I think that anything can happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what's extraordinary about that? Of course, he had no idea what was coming when he said yes. On the way back to his home, the convoy he was in was attacked by rebels.
Wow.
That's right, I remember.
He jumped off the back of a truck a few weeks later and left his wedding ring and finger on the truck.
Yeah, that's right.
Like all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
But because he knew that this was a God thing,
Right.
he knew that he was going to prevail.
Right.
And now in the north of Uganda, there would be something like 30 plus C3 churches in what was formerly a war zone.
How amazing is that? 30 plus churches out of just one moment of a guy saying, yes, here I am, send me. And the power and resources accompany obedience.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And a willing heart, right?
And of course, at that time, it was kind of hopeless. How do you come to Uganda and then you start in Kitgum? That's tiny village.
Yes.
We would think that anything would start in Kampala, which is the center.
Exactly.
But how it leaves the small village and then starts to influence the rest of the country and the neighboring countries is just amazing.
It is.
Willingness.
And one thing leads to another, because my wife has fallen in love with Uganda and Africa and has been to Kampala and Uganda and Gulu
And
plenty of times and ended up building with Alice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Go on, Pat.
Yeah, well, Pastor Chris came to one of our gatherings and David Livingston says, I want you to meet someone.
Wow.
Takes Chris over to meet Alice Chan, who is in this little town in northern Uganda. It was like a Wild West town. It's called Pedere.
Wow.
But Alice had established a place where what you'd call child brides, right? So these are young women who were kidnapped by rebels and they had kids.
Right.
And they were ostracized from their community. But for them to be able to be taught how to look after their kids, to be looked after through childbirth, to be given a way of making an income was just extraordinary. So Chris just thought, I love what this lady is doing, came alongside her, and it must be over 15 years now that we have partnered with Alice in doing an absolutely extraordinary work, not just in Pedere now, but in other parts of Uganda.
So good.
Don't you love that? I
love it.
I love being part of the answer and not just shouting at the problem.
Yeah.
Like we'd all say we're not in favor of abortion, and we are definitely pro-life. But at the same time, I think we've got to provide not just an opinion, but build houses like that where women are able to actually have the children in safety. And all sorts of other things have come out of that, like the birthing kits.
That's right. Birthing kits, a whole accommodation for people who are travelling into the district to stay at, where the girls have learned hospitality, how to cook, how to look after guests. So an economically, what would you say, fragile or economically out on a limb young woman in northern Uganda is not in a good place. But when she can have skills and generate income, then she's able to look after a family.
And that has been multiplied because through partnerships, for instance, with C3 NYC, we were able to purchase property and then we've built classrooms.
Fantastic.
And we have 470 kids there in what we call C3 Alive School.
I didn't even know that.
Amazing.
470 kids in a school.
In school.
That is awesome.
And it's self-sustaining. Because of the trainings we've been doing. Because there can be a handout. But what has been done in these areas is a hand up.
Come on.
So, we can help you have some land and start buildings. But the way it's going to be sustained is the local churches in that village
Come on.
supporting, and then the parents giving local contribution. And Pastor Phil, it's amazing because
Yeah.
this is a self-supporting school now, and so
That's
good.
astonishing.
Yeah.
And that is so different to the way Christianity has been historically.
Come on.
Here, the West has just sent the checks, and the local people have not developed the skills to generate their own funds often.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might have. But that is one of the unique things that you've initiated over here, Pat.
Yeah.
The School of Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To make a disciple in Africa, you've got to include economic empowerment.
Yeah,
you got
you,
to.
you
Right.
can't leave that to the side.
Right.
So Bible, church planting, doctrine, leadership, yes, but also how do you fund your family?
Yeah.
And it takes
Come
so
on,
much
so
pressure
good,
off a
so
church
good,
plant.
so
So to be able to understand biblical wisdom around finances, to be able to budget, to be able to look at a small business that will support your family. And then if somebody goes through all these steps and we go, look, they're faithful, then to get a mentor for them and some microfinance.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we've had the joy, I guess there'd be literally thousands of people
Yeah.
impacted if you look at family members.
Yeah.
But to look at a family that couldn't afford to send their kid to school,
Right.
couldn't
Yep.
buy them their books.
Yeah.
The kid would go to school and then they'd come home ashamed
Yeah.
because they were sent
Yeah.
home. But
Yeah.
now they go, they got their uniform, they got their books, and
So
it
good.
prospers the whole church
Yes.
because then they tithe,
Right.
Yeah.
and that it increases the income of the church, and then the church can reach out
Right.
without having to look
Yeah.
overseas.
And actually, it's not been to the church circles alone. It's like an entire
right.
village,
Yeah,
an entire
yeah.
village transformed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to a village like Buera, you
Yes.
will see a lot of youth activities,
Right.
soccer tournament,
Right.
dancing competition,
Right.
and then the entrepreneurial program
Right.
in the village.
that's just great.
And this is like a whole sub-county, and it's not just about church members, it's also Muslims.
Yes.
Someone receiving seed capital to buy something.
In a
and-
C3 village.
in a C3 village.
Yes.
It's amazing. And then you have
love
church
it.
and you have a school. And what an incredible opportunity to be on this continent, serving and ministering. And
so
I
good.
mean, I didn't know Pastor Phil. I didn't know Pat. I
Right.
didn't know Anil. And,
I know.
and now we're here. God is doing wonders.
It is so amazing as we move forward. Anil, you have been not always a pastor. You were in the banking
Yeah, Pastor Phil.
world. But recently you've made the transition out.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. How has that been for you to no longer be in the commercial world? Are the wages less?
Yeah, Pastor Phil, that was a big step. That was a big step I had to take. What I'm realizing is when you look at it with the carnal eye, you will say the wages is less, but you're also realizing that God eliminates some of the expenses. And I read an article that says we keep you alive to row the boat.
Wow.
So 90% of managing your status within the marketplace, half of your expenses goes into that. But now that we've made that transition, we are able to normalize our lives.
Wow.
We are able to see God come through in significant ways. The one big thing that I think is working for me is just my sheer awareness, presence in church. And I can start seeing, one of the young men in our church, in our movement, we have 17 campuses, we have 5 in South Africa, we've got another 11 in Malawi. Just being able to share with them, I asked them the question. I said, hey, financially it's stressful. Do you think I should go back? They said, no, you were acting like an absent father before. We could get away with a lot more. Wow. Now that you are here,
we're accountable.
Yeah, and then I also had this whole thing of having Chinese walls between what I did in the marketplace and what I
Right.
did in church. But now I'm realizing
It's seamless.
those are seamless.
Yeah.
Those are really capabilities you can pull
Yeah.
into church and just start working the ministry.
Fantastic.
Looking at building teams for the region. We
Yeah.
started the region off with 6 churches.
Right.
Having this dynamic team in Southern Africa, we're now over 135 churches.
Unbelievable.
We just looked at the number of people on average the average was about 25. We're starting to break through 35, 50 in attendance.
Beautiful.
And why we're excited of having you here and Pat here. We have this thing about you must teach people to fish, you
Yes,
know,
yeah.
rather than give them a fish. But
Right.
he came up with the coin. That's where seed funding came up. At least give us a rod.
Yeah.
You know, you can't teach us to fish, but you don't give us a rod to go fish with.
Right.
So now this whole entrepreneurial concept
Yeah,
is saying
so
we're going to teach you to fish, but we're also coming in with some seed funding to
Right.
help you through the process, coach you through the process. And
So
we're
good.
starting to see the quality, for a lack of a better word, but
Yeah.
the level of the people that are coming into our movement are not hungry to get. They are now here to give. They are belonging.
And you know, I honestly believe that it isn't just an earmark of C3.
Yeah.
It's an earmark of being in the kingdom of
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Come on, Pastor Phil.
That you are transformed from a consumer to a producer.
Wow.
I think that could be, you know, it could be one of the most significant evidences that you truly have
Right.
been born again.
Come on,
Yes.
Pastor Phil.
Come on. I think that if you really have been born again, you're a giver.
Yeah.
You're not a taker.
Yes.
And I would say, honestly, people, that the most dramatic transformation in the New Testament would probably be Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
And he was a taker.
Right.
Yeah.
He was a taker all the time. He
Wow.
would steal money by fraud, by every which way. He just wanted to keep getting and getting and getting.
Wow.
And in the moment he met Jesus,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh?
Wow.
How good's that?
the moment he met Jesus, he had him in his life. He changed. He said, I'm going to give half my goods away to the poor.
Yeah.
And everybody I've defrauded, I'm going to pay him back 4 times.
Yeah.
as much.
Wow.
So he,
Yeah.
the presence of Christ
Yeah.
in Africa,
Yes.
in any community around the world, I believe will transform us
Yeah.
from wanting to get and take to being people who want to produce and give.
And then what that does in the individual
Yeah.
Right.
is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Totally.
So Rock has told some of the stories of the guys that have done the training and got the seed capital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And just to see this sense of I'm now a part of the solution around
Right.
you. And having all that you need all the time on every opportunity that you can be generous, and seeing now, instead of being on the receiving end, that they're
Yeah.
able to be generous. It's like it just puts this
Well, that's
thing on the
scripture.
inside.
Come on.
Yeah.
That is a scripture.
Yeah.
Having all sufficiency in all things, that you may have an abundance for every good work.
yeah.
For goodness
And then-
powerful,
and then-
powerful.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with poverty, the biggest thing is the mind.
Right.
It's the way we think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people would think it's just the money or it's the
Right.
seed capital. But I
Right.
think it's how you enlarge your tent.
Yeah.
And if someone looked at me several years ago before joining the movement
Right.
and what I am now after being part of the movement,
Yeah.
you're more like, I think I'm a solution to this community.
Yeah.
Right.
I have an answer for this village. We can make it better.
So good.
That enlargement, that
Yeah.
transformation actually is the
That
way
works,
to go.
right, Anil?
Yeah.
Very much so, Pastor Phil. You know, you asked me about that transition. That in the marketplace, I've not lost my connections.
Right.
And about a weekend ago, I was with these corporate guys, really very affluent guys, really doing their stuff. And one of the guys, I phoned him up. He told me that him and his wife are struggling to have a baby. But in my prayer time, I'm praying. I call him up. I say, Sampiwe, what's your baby's name? He's like, which baby? I'm like, the one that's coming.
Yeah.
Right.
He says, wow, what do you mean? I said, yeah, you got to give your baby that's coming a name.
Right.
He gives me the name, Pastor Phil. But I have this awkward conversation with a great colleague of mine. He drops the phone. He phones me back 10 minutes later. He says, you know what? We've been pregnant and we haven't told anybody. We were just going to tell the tribal leaders.
That's great.
So I'm also realizing that our presence, sometimes we serve our community better as believers,
Yeah.
as Christians,
So good.
as presenting God.
Yeah.
So when we were in this session, so I asked them, they asked, what's your next? And they tell me, we have something against you.
Oh.
You're just not sharing enough. I said, I thought you guys only want to talk about your world. They said, no, we want to know what's happening
Yes.
in your world.
Yeah.
So just that unlocking what you think God can't do,
Right.
He will do. And I think the continent of Africa is rife and open for
Totally.
a unseen miracle. You know, when
Come
Jesus
on.
casted out the devil,
Yeah.
they said Israel has never seen it anymore.
Yeah.
We want these unseen miracles. Yeah.
Exactly.
A genuine move of God.
Yeah.
A genuine
Yeah.
move of God.
Yeah.
And it is it's such a great concept for all the pastors out there to not be just thinking that you're pastors of your flock
Come on.
that come to church on Sunday, but actually be pastors of your whole community.
Yes. Yeah.
The ones who are yet to be in your church.
Wow.
And like that,
Yeah.
bring them up and say, hey, just thinking about you, praying for you,
Yeah.
checking in to seeing how you're doing. That's a very simple phrase
Yes.
that any pastor could do with the real estate agents in your community,
So true.
the local mayor,
Come on,
the local business people and business women.
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing thing. I want to talk about one more thing before we sign off, because we're here in South Africa and Uganda to hold 2 regional conferences on this continent. And we're anticipating, quite a few hundred people, leaders, pastors, and
Yeah.
teams
Yeah.
all coming in. And it's going to be absolutely amazing. So we're getting ready for that. But one of the things I have seen is that, like you said, Rock, your thinking has enlarged.
Yeah.
Yes.
A few months ago, maybe a year ago now, you held a dance competition
Yes.
for youth. And over the 3 days, they had 30,000 people
Yeah.
come to the dance competition.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
My goodness, everything in Africa.
Because he's a dancer. He can dance. He's got moves.
Everything in Africa moves. This is a very young population.
Yeah.
Like, so you want to build something. And you know how I got that concept, Pastor Phil?
Right.
I was trying to look at how to connect to the community.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of these times when I was in Sydney, we had a dinner.
Right.
And I asked Pastor Phil and said, how would my community fall in love with our church? Because during that time, maybe they thought,
Yeah.
Yeah, you understand.
C3,
Who
we
are
don't,
these
we don't
guys?
understand what
Yeah.
they are. So Pastor Phil told me, go and do something with the community that
Right.
can make them to relate to you.
Right.
So one of the things that came into my mind was this dancing competition.
Perfect.
Like,
Perfect.
how do we get everyone dancing
Love it.
on a Christian rhythm
Love it.
Right.
that we've made?
Right.
Now, some of them are not Christians, but when you put a gift and you tell them, come,
Yeah.
and of course, Africa is used to crusades.
Yes.
Yes.
2 hours preaching and preaching and
Yeah.
preaching. And people have started to resist that.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? So what we do is, let's dance. We'll have a gift for you. And then in between, we'll have an interlude of like 10 minutes. Preach the word and make an altar call and just engage.
Amazing.
Tell people that we love them. So it's just good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good to create bridges, not
Yeah.
walls, with the communities that we're in. And Anil, like we recently in our global exec, we mapped out our next year,
Come on.
2 to 3 years of church planting.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is we wanted to make sure where our funds were traveling
Yeah, come on.
and that people were saying, okay, we're going to do this in our region. And we've got like 14 regions around the world.
Yeah.
So, and we want every region to be planting churches. Now, out of all of the regions, Anil, he had this long list of churches he was starting. And we're all going, wow, this guy's vision is pretty big. How's that going?
Yeah, Pastor Phil, it's going extraordinary. So we believe we must give birth to pregnant churches.
What?
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
Right. Not be pregnant with churches, give birth to pregnant churches.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the key things that we have is, if you're not giving birth to other churches, then what are you here for? You're just a consumer.
Right.
Are you holding the people back just to build
Right.
a bigger auditorium? We know that takes us some time. And we are on that list is to plant the apostolic DNA churches. But we don't want to plant churches like elephants. Every 4 years we give birth. We want to go like rabbits, rabbits can just breed and give birth. And so, Pastor Phil, there will
That's
be some of them
fantastic.
that will be not of what we expect, but it will populate the kingdom.
Right.
What we realized was a great thing is having a person like Asaf having a great
Yes.
person like Jason from
Yeah.
Elburn Heights backing
Right.
us up, really having a heart
That's
for it.
Jason Schroeder.
Yeah,
Jason and Emma Schroeder.
Yeah, Jason Schroeder, really backing us up and allowing us to go into places, try and find, and what for us is the best is sometimes we find a man in the country that connects us to the country, but that's not the man of peace. And we fizzle through that until we get the man of peace. So our biggest vision is that we want to, like when America went to the moon and planted a flag.
Right.
We want to make sure, I want to make sure as the regional director that I
Right.
plant the first flag on every country that
Right.
we have.
Right.
The others can come, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
that we plant a flag. But we're really set to do some significant things. What I said to Pastor Pat, you know, Africa has got an excuse. If you don't help us, we have no accountability. But when the movement comes in and says we are going to help you,
Yeah.
we then get overwhelmed. But
Right.
we are better for that now. We
Exactly.
are better for that. Yeah, we are better for that. But like I said, we were originally when we started, we were in 2 countries. We're now exploring 6 countries.
6 on the continent.
We're in relationships,
Fantastic.
having conversations. Hopefully by 2025, we should
Yeah.
have key points in all those countries.
Yeah, our experience here in Africa, I would say, and in most developing countries, Pat, has been one of surging forward with a lot of interest and people wanting to be involved, then a pruning,
Yeah.
a sort of a clarifying, a purifying, a kind of sorting out the people who really want to keep
Yeah.
on traveling. And so that's a normal part of kingdom life.
Yes.
Yes.
Jesus said, look, I'm the vine, you're the branches, and the Father's going to prune away even the fruitful branches.
Yeah, come
if,
on.
if they're not really
Come
going to
on.
get connected, then
Yeah.
it doesn't work. And so that's part of our movement, part of the process forward. But we want to maintain that DNA, maintain that culture
Come
of
on.
faith and being spirit-filled and empowered, and people keeping Jesus Christ at the center and not hovering around a doctrine so much as around a
come on.
person.
Yes.
And so as we keep pushing forward, building the church, we want to make sure that DNA stays alive. And these guys are certainly doing that, thinking bigger all the time.
yeah.
It's been great chatting with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yep. And we'll see you soon.